When talking about diversity, it is important to agree on what certain terms mean. For example, when we speak about racism, we are speaking about the ideas that we are socialized to see and believe in our society. Discrimination and prejudice are choices we make based on those racist ideas. Everyone in our society has their own experiences and perspectives of race. It's each person's decision whether or not to hold that prejudice or to discriminate against because of the present diversity. Even having a lack of experience with racial diversity shapes how you will respond to racial diversity in the future. For example, in the article we read by Robin DiAngelo, she discusses how protective pillows can protect others from racial stress. This is the case for our group of 4.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Curtis. I'm a freshman at WKU and majoring in psychology with a minor in Spanish. I grew up in a fortunate household with one older sister who is now a senior at WKU. I lived in a predominantly white community and went to a predominantly white middle school and high school. I was never around much diversity, but I did witness racism towards the students that weren't white just because they were so outnumbered.
My name is Hannah King, and I'm majoring in psychology. I was born in Florida, and I stayed there until I was 5. I grew up as an only child. I had a very fortunate childhood with loving parents. I did not grow up around much diversity. My neighborhood, even after I moved to Kentucky, was predominantly white. My current home is in Meade County, which has a population of 28,000. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 90% of my county's population is white. I definitely grew up in a protected pillow. Because of this, I didn't really know that much about race or the inequalities between them. It was not relevant to me in my childhood. I suppose some would call it blissfully ignorant.
I'm Amanda Parker. I was born in Louisville, Kentucky, and lived there until I came to WKU. Living in Louisville meant there was a lot of diversity. There were people of all colors in my neighborhood, my school, and even my church. So, we were never really taught about diversity because it wasn't an issue. We grew up in it. And I personally was never taught by my parents what racism was because I never had to experience it.
My name is Amanda Sue Barrett. My major is interdisciplinary studies with a focus in social and behavioral issues. I was born and raised in a small rural town called Possum Trot in Marshall County, Kentucky. Growing up, it was an all-white town, and today it is still predominantly white. Though I'm from a bi-religious household, I was raised Church of Christ. I was taught to treat everyone as equals. Racism was vaguely mentioned only when my schoolwork covered the Civil Rights Movement in history classes or something about race was brought up in the media. Racism was talked about in past tenses for the most part. Both my parents claimed to not be racist like their parents were.
In high school, I mostly hung out with people I had known my whole life. Everyone I lived close to went to the same elementary school, middle school, and high school. I was a cheerleader and was best friends with the 5 other cheerleaders in my grade. All throughout high school, everyone on the cheer team was white and from similar backgrounds. The few black guys at our school were on the basketball team, so the most interaction we had with them was when we were cheering for them. Like I said earlier, because of the white students overbearingly outnumbered to those that weren't white, everyone knew of the black students because they all hung out together. We did have a diversity club, but no one was really in it because of the obvious lack of diversity.
When I transitioned to high school, I made a new friend group as most people might do. I was part of a close-knit group of 6 throughout my high school years. One of my best friends still is Janessa. She is from a big family, and they are all from Hawaii. Since the beginning of senior year, our assistant principal told her that they would have to work on pronouncing her middle name for the graduation ceremony. During our senior meeting, in preparation for graduation, she went up to him and asked if he wanted to practice saying it. He said they weren't going to do middle names at all this year. That same day, a few people came up to her saying that the assistant principal told them he wasn't saying middle names because of her long middle name. This crushed her. Middle names are a strong and important part of the Hawaiian culture. I believe that this was my first time seeing racism impact someone close to me.
By high school, I knew what racism was. We were taught about slavery and racism in middle school. So, when my high school wanted to change the dress code and restrict the type of hair that black people had, I knew that something wasn't right. I don't know if it was rooted in racism or if it was just that we were a traditional school, so the administration wanted us to have different rules, but regardless, something didn't seem right. Black people's afros could only be a certain amount of inches tall. They also couldn't have dreads. Those were the 2 restrictions that really stood out, but there might have even been more. While it wasn't just black people who had hair restrictions, they had more than the white people. Basically, the only restrictions that white people had were that boys' hair couldn't be past their collar and they couldn't have beards. There weren't really any restrictions for white girls. So, when students decided to speak up about it, they just got rid of the hair dress code until they could figure out a solution. As far as I know, they haven't brought it back since.
I went to Marshall County High School, which was at the time an all-white school. The only interaction with black students was when our school played other schools that had black students. I had never gone to middle school ball games to have had interactions before my high school years. It was around this time that my mother told me that if I were to ever fall in love with someone of color, to know it was obviously fun, but to keep it quiet until after my grandparents had passed away. She said it lightheartedly as if it were a joke, but we both knew their reactions would be much less than ideal.
In college, I decided to try out Greek life and joined a sorority. In my sorority of 140-something people, everyone is white. Most sororities have mostly or all one race in them, showing the lack of diversity in Greek life. There are typically all black and all white sororities, which by even labeling them in this way shows that there isn't usually a mix of the two. College was the first time that I've been around actual diversity, and although it's apparent throughout campus, it is not recognized by Greek life.
My current experience with racism is indirectly through the news and media outlets. I follow many news stations on my social media. The most common stories I see that deal with race is those of police brutality. Those heartbreaking stories of black kids getting beat up and killed by police officers because of racial profiling. It's not right. Because I am white, I never had to live in that constant state of mourning that Claudia Rankine described in her essay about black life. My white privilege allows me to watch these crimes and killings happen from afar.
Being white, I haven't had any first-hand experience with racism. About a month ago, though, I saw an article in the WKU Herald about a Confederate sign that had been put back up since it was taken down during the construction of Hilltopper Hall. The sign says, "Confederate State Capital of Kentucky." A lot of people of color are upset about this sign, and I can see why. For people of color, the Confederacy and anything associated with it is a big reminder of the racist past of the U.S. I think that the university should take it down because it brings up bad feelings for people of color, and for some people, it could even be interpreted as a university being racist.
My current experience with racism is listening to my friends of color's experiences and how they differ so much from my own. For example, I've never been wrongfully arrested or convicted because of racial profiling. I've never been asked, "What are you?" I've never been openly discriminated, bullied, or assaulted because of the color of my skin. I've never felt that my race wasn't wildly represented by the media. I've never felt that I shouldn't go somewhere because of the fear of being mistreated based on my race. If I have children with someone of my own race, I don't have to explain systematic racism to them solely for their own physical protection. I've never been told you're pretty for someone of your race. Lastly, I can do well in a challenging situation without being called a credit to my race.